My name is Matthew Reever. Always liked being active ever since I was, young kid. Just something about it. It's just, I guess, how I was raised. I'm in the Army National Guard, pursuing that path. Being in the military was something I've always wanted to do. Don't really regret joining later in because it gave me an opportunity to develop more mentally, and I think that helps me in the long run. Currently in a police academy, going that route civilian wise, kind of have that, like I said, that desire to be active and that career aspect, and motivated to help others and, make a change, if you will, even if that's a slight extent. I had a lot of goals. I like to be motivated. It's not very common nowadays, so try to hype up when I can. It's a crazy time for sure. Not
Definitely.
not many people want to, I guess, exceed the standard, if you will, and I kind of try to do what I can to influence the opposite of that.
What led you down the road to the National Guard?
So I was originally set on like Marines because I figured that if I was going to go, I wanted to go all out. And initially, I didn't really realize there was a guard component, and I always thought it was like active or reserve. And as I got older, and with family conditions and everything like that, I didn't really want to up and leave, and I kind of felt like I had some responsibility to stay here, and give back in a sense. So I didn't want to just, leave. So I was actually going through academy at a correctional center, and someone brought it to my attention that there was a guard component, and I was still really, wanting to go that route. So I dug into it, started researching it, and about a week or two, I was hitting up a recruiter and like ready to sign up because like it's just something that's it's just part of me, I guess.
What is that process like when you go and do that? What's the initial step like?
So they're all pretty basic in the starting process, I guess. So obviously you go talk to a recruiter, you'll go up to what they call MEPS, and you'll take the ASVAB if you don't already have one on record. I'm pretty sure everybody takes one in high school, but there's like a cutoff, like a few years or so that you'd have to retake it. So you go up there, you take it, and then they score you based on certain like technical skill, math, different stuff like that to see kind of like what jobs you are qualified for. And then you choose one, and then you kind of go back and then like back home. And then you go back up to MEPS later on to do your whole like fitness test, make sure you're good, not broken or anything. They ask you questions. It's a pretty long little process. You're up there for like 2 days, staying at a hotel. You go up there next day. They do all this kind of screening stuff. Then it's dependent upon like the time you join and everything for whenever you ship out, probably the branch too. But then you kind of just wait around. I had to wait a few months before I shipped off to basic, and that's pretty much it. You just have to qualify physically. You have to pass ASVAB and everything.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's interesting to me. I think like taking that kind of test to see like, hey, what am I going to be good at? Because I think that's a question we struggle with a lot as young people, just like coming out of high school or even out of college. It's like, what do I want to do? Like, what am I good at? And it's kind of cool that the military really kind of has that help for you.
That
It's
aspect, yeah.
yeah, it's almost like, hey, you don't have to just figure it out in a way. It's like we'll help you. I think a lot of times we're kind of fearful of getting put into a certain box because a lot of times we might think I want to do this, but you figure out maybe I'm not good at that thing and I'm better at something else. Were you surprised when you kind of got your results back, or do you kind of like did you have like something that you thought you were going to do and hey, that's what I ended up doing?
So initially, when I was younger, I was just kind of like gun ho, all excited to do stuff. I was wanting to just go infantry because like that was the basic troop, And when I was enlisting, knowing that I was going to go the law enforcement route, I wanted to go MP, military police. So that was set in my head that that's what I was aiming towards and everything. So when I got the results back, I did qualify for that. So that was just like a high five, you know. So
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool to have
achieved it.
that. Yeah, yeah, to have that goal and that thought in mind. And because it's kind of like, I feel like whenever we're kids, like, hey, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a basketball player, I want to be whatever, and it's like so rare to somebody actually get to do what they want to do with their life. And I think it's kind of a really a sad thing in a lot of ways, but it's cool to see that you kind of had this vision and it kind of worked out for you.
I pursue it though, you know.
I think that's another big part of it is like, you have to put it in. You have to actually go after it and chase it and put the work in. And, it's not always going to be, rainbows and butterflies, even though in your head it kind of seems like it is at the beginning, but definitely and that's life just, I think, in general, but it ties into health and fitness and everything. It's like, we're sitting here and maybe like the first of the year and you're thinking, oh, I want to, lose 50 pounds this year. And you can just like sit there and imagine yourself, like what you'll look like and what you'll be able to do. But then when, March 3rd hits, it's like, are you still trying to get after it and really put in the work on a daily basis? And I think it's something that we struggle with. And you kind of mentioned that motivation and that push to go the extra mile. And where do you think that comes from?
It's a good question. I mean, there's definitely different sources and factors that go into play with that motivation, that drive, and everything. There's a lot of external, but it really comes down to the internal drive. You know, your why. Why do you want to succeed in the first place? Why do you want to achieve that, and everything else? And that why could be dependent upon, you know, society or just your own desire to achieve that, you know, said goal. And that's you know, that's the deeper question. Is like, why do you want that goal, you know? So when you find that good why, though, man, that's that driving factor, and that's the deciding factor too, you know, of whether or not you're going to get it. If that why is strong enough and it just keeps you up at night, or, you know, it wakes you up and it just keeps haunting you, if you will, and
A lot
makes you
of
get after it.
There's a lot of that, like kind of like haunt to it because you want it. It's like you really want this a certain end goal, but you also, I think if you set it up the right way and you figure things out, the process I think can also be like a really great experience as well. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost is the process, the
Mm-hmm.
waking up and the going to work out and just anything else that goes along with it. It's like, that's really like 99% of it. And
Absolutely.
if you can't enjoy that, if you're not really, I mean, you certainly, I think, push past like if you're not enjoying it to a certain degree, but like if you're absolutely miserable, I think there's a certain point where you just have to say, okay, maybe this goal just isn't actually what I'm passionate about, and I think that's a struggle whenever we have a lot of influence in our lives saying, you should go to law school or you should look like this, you should keep playing this sport. And a lot of times it's hard to kind of get through and be self motivated whenever it's not, the process is not something that you find enjoyable.
Absolutely. And I find it interesting that you brought that up, because I had this realization a while back actually just about that. And I think I was thinking to myself, like, why do people just like have these big goals, coming in the gym, you know, for like a week and then they just stop? And I think it is that the outlook on the process itself, because they're so outcome orientated, which can be good at times in certain aspects. But when you don't appreciate the process, it's so easy to fall off, because your mind just is just so focused on the outcome. And when you don't see those results, it's, you lose that ambition, because you lose hope and stuff. But whenever you just focus on the process, and like for example, like to give an analogy, it's like you want that lock unlocked, right? But you don't value the key. So it's kind of
Right.
ate up. And when you think about it like that, and the key is the process, you know, you need that key to unlock that lock, and that's the goal. So you have to learn how to at least embrace that process, that path to get you where you want to go in the first place. And it might suck, but you got to make peace with it, you know?
You kind of mentioned your why and kind of go into that. What is your why?
So I've had many among the years come up, and, you know, that's just something you have to create. And I've just kind of learned that I don't want to depend on a single why, and I just can't either. It's like my whys consist and range from just wanting to make the most out of my life to if I might be relied upon, either myself relying upon my own physical, conditioning and training and everything, to someone else's life relying upon it. So, there's a lot of stake, and it's just, I think that the more whys you have, it's like the more weapons in your arsenal, if you will, the more support you're going to have whenever those challenges come up.
I think one thing that maybe a lot of people don't have that you may have is this reason to stay active and to stay motivated because of a career, because of a career goal, or having to protect. And does that play a big role?
Absolutely. As part of a society and everything, like you play that part, even though it's a small part, you still make up that larger sum. And it's kind of amazing how much impact we have upon others, directly or indirectly, especially nowadays with social media, if one's connected with that. But we have a lot of potential that a lot of people don't think they really realize. And just being negative and keeping to yourself, that does impact others around you, just like being motivated does.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's definitely like a chain reaction. You see one person, and there's big influencers out there. There's certainly those people that I think a lot of us look to for that kind of like that structure of, this is probably the right thing to do. It's good that they're doing it because it pushes me to go to the next level as well. And I think those people, even though a lot of them might be huge influencers and have, a million followers or whatever, it's like that can really be anyone. It doesn't have to be that person with a million followers. It can be literally you or me just sitting here, and maybe one person that views our profile and says, "Oh man, they're doing it. And they're just a regular person like me." They don't have all this money or this fame or whatever, all these resources. If they can do it, then I can do it. And I think, kind of like you're saying, it just goes back to like, if I can motivate that person, and that person starts to do good things and great things as well, like what's that person going to do for somebody else?
Absolutely. It gives them hope.
So when and at what point did you start to get into, was it your military, or was it before, to get into like physical training and working out and things like that?
Always kind of like being active. It kind of grew in consistency. I did MMA during my high school pretty hard. I was pretty into that. As kind of years gone by, I had more of a philosophical change, if you will, and I got into stoicism and thing, and different philosophies, and it kind of triggered a self reflection within myself and a boost in my interest in self improvement in general. So it kind of directed my focus in a more efficient way rather than just, oh, I put in some work.
So what do you think it is about self-improvement that really changes somebody? Because I think there's so many people out there who are kind of just going with the flow. They're kind of just saying, this is who I am, and if you don't like it, then too bad. And I think to a certain point that's a there's advantages to that, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't think to the detriment of a person. I feel like there's always room for self-improvement, and there's
Oh,
so
absolutely.
many there's so many different people who I think take advantage of that as well, with selling things and whatnot. But really and truly, there is a self improvement, self help, whatever you want to call it, aspect that everybody can benefit from. And I think, kind of like we were saying, like it's just if everyone, and I think it goes back to, if you look at kind of the bigger social scale, it seems like we're all trying to solve problems that aren't our own. And if we could just take care of our own problems first, then we would have a lot less of a group problem.
Yep, we play that a little cog in the whole machine, and all we got to focus, like in the stoic aspect, like focus on what you can't control, and what you can't control is your own improvement or lack thereof. And I think, that big reason why people don't is just, the question why.
Yeah.
It's like, why do that? Because I know, I'm skating by,
Yeah. It's tough.
people are comfortable with it. Yeah.
I think it's tough to even like sometimes realize that you are skating by, just from like the perspective of, we're always busy. And sometimes being busy can be seen as like being getting better, but when you're not pushing yourself and you're not trying to do something better, you know, even if it's just one small thing a day, I think it's like I don't have time. Like I'm I think for just so many people, we're just so busy all the time. It's like, are we being busy with the right things?
Right. I think a lot of people misinterpret busy for productive. And a lot of times that's not really the case. They're just putting more stress on themselves. They're not getting any closer to their goals, or sometimes even further from their goals and what they really want in life.
Yeah, and I feel like one kind of hard thing to unravel is this idea of like if everyone were doing what they really loved and getting better, what would the world even look like? It on the surface it would probably you would probably think, okay, everything would be so much better, and maybe it would, but imagine like all these people who would stop doing jobs they don't like and try to do something else. Who would be, it's like where would the infrastructure of the world that we've created, where would it be? Like, is that a sustainable kind of like mindset and reality for everyone? Or is it just kind of this thing that is
Utopia. Yeah.
unrealistic? Yeah.
Yeah. uh it's an interesting, thought on whether or not like society would function, because if everybody just pursued their goals, like would we even have the necessary amount of people to do that, just the simple labor jobs that
Yeah.
are essential in making the economy work and everything. Sure, some people do like that and they enjoy that, and they're fine there, but would it be enough if everybody did just, aspire and chase what they really wanted most? Because
Yeah.
I mean, in some cases, some people, what they want most isn't maybe the best for everyone else or even themselves. And I think there's
That's
that little dichotomy there.
I had this kind of thought pop up on a previous podcast, and the person that I was talking to kind of was like saying, and it made sense to a degree, and kind of just like what you said as well. But like people will, people do, I think, enjoy those specific things that we don't enjoy, that we don't, just because we don't find it something to go towards a goal. Somebody is finding that to be a something, a dream. And I think that, maybe that is the answer. Maybe it's like everybody has their own their own kind of like separate dream, and we kind of get lost in this idea of just because we want to, you know be the best at something, that doesn't mean that everybody wants to be the best at that specific thing. Everybody has their own ideas of what success is.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back into like just focusing on that process of getting to where you want to go, and then if it motivates someone to do something similar in their journey of achieving what they want, then, hell yeah. But if not, I mean, you might motivate someone else.
Definitely. So getting kind of back to you in your own life and things, I think a big part of today is like staying mentally sharp. And how do you do that? Is there a specific kind of like routine you have, or a few a few habits you have to where it's like it keeps your mind sharp, it keeps it kind of clear and not in the ruts that it can kind of get stuck in sometimes?
So with routines and stuff, that's a debatable concept. I've went through many trial and error routine schedules, different approaches to managing my time and doing all these things. And I think that's kind of an important aspect, is like, you're trying different things, see what works. And, thinking like a scientist in that regard of like, okay, I'm falling off the ladder, you're reflecting on that, and you get back on track, going back to that why, and just keeping that in your mind. And I mean, doing things that progress you towards it and having those, I guess, finding what works for you. I've tried different things. It's the whole process and kind of mixing it up so you don't get, I guess, accustomed to it, and burnt out, if you will. I like, podcasts, meditation, reading. It's a good way to mix it up, and you just have those balance. And I think that's really an important aspect as well, is just maintaining a balance of that self-improvement so that you don't get burned out.
Yeah, that's a good point there too. Is kind of like getting accustomed to what's going on around you, because it can kind of sometimes even like you'll be in this good routine, if you want to call it that, but in a way, being in that routine shelters you from new ideas or like new feelings, new perspectives, and things like that. So I kind of like that idea of like, what can I do to improve on, this is a good thing, but how can I make it better? How can I switch it up?
Right. Yeah.
I think even just like in my head right now, thinking like, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, this is my routine. And Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, I can't honestly don't know what days I just skipped, but anyway, like I have a different kind of routine just to like get a little bit outside of your comfort zone and outside of a the echo chamber that can sometimes become that routine, because I know I certainly get in those moods where it's like, okay, I'm loving this podcast. I've literally listened to like 76 episodes today, and and it's like I've become almost like this other person. It's pretty crazy how at least that affects me very much. I can get sucked into something, and it takes me into like a different world of who I kind of become in that routine.
Right. It's that, and it kind of helps like identifying like when you are slipping off like your productiveness, and it can kind of help identify where your weaknesses lie, and kind of just keeps the excitement up because you're trying different things. And it's like, okay, next week I got to do this. And, you just got to experiment with it. All we got is time, and trying different things, keep learning, having an open mind of different approaches you can take, different workouts you can do, different books you can read, all this stuff.
Do you have any specific podcasts or specific books that you recommend to people a lot?
I'm a pretty big fan of Joe Rogan. He's got some good ones out there for sure. He's actually the one that inspired me to get into making a podcast. I haven't done that yet, but it's on the goal list. Um, One book I do recommend for anyone to read is "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins. That's a essential book to get into for sure. And then pretty transformative one as well was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It's a good one as well.
I actually have that
Um,
downloaded right now, and the
awesome.
audiobook of that. I haven't started it yet, but it's next on my list. I'm excited for it.
Right on. And then by Jocko Willink, he's got some good books as well about leadership and discipline and all that stuff, and it's all pretty good. And I mean, those would definitely be some good starting points for anybody out there looking to get into changing their lifestyle, or even if they're already pursuing that change.
So I think, yeah, I agree. Podcasts are really, they're really good. And I actually heard this the other day on a podcast. It's kind of funny, but it's like a book in a way, but it's a constant update of like what's going on. What the current situation is, or is there new information, like a new way to look at the information. And like I think books are really good, and I think they can definitely help us out a lot. I'm a big fan of reading, and actually consume most of them through audiobooks, but just getting that information. But I think a podcast just has this feature about it. Like I was saying, it can be updated. It can be, the next episode. And, we just talked about this on the last episode, but here's like a new idea on that same idea, or here's new information on that same idea. I think that's such a cool thing. And the fact that, we can all kind of hop in and make a podcast, it's so
Absolutely.
accessible, and we can share our ideas, and like me and you can have this conversation, and we can, you know, just put it out there for the world to hear, and I think part of the cool part of that as well is just like putting it out there for ourselves to hear in like 10 years or 20 years and kind of looking back and
Right.
thinking,
Yeah.
oh, that's where I was in that stage of life. You know, it's like it's this time capsule of life in a way and of ideas. And just imagine if, you know, there was a George Washington podcast and things like that to where we could go back and look at a true sense of what life was like in those days. And I think hopefully as long as, you know, nothing crazy happens and technology is still usable in, you know, 200, 300 years and so on, like just the power to capture is so cool. I think, you know, with podcasts.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's definitely approach that podcasts hit that books really can't. It's that, especially when it's something like this where uh, people are engaging with each other on a topic where you can have those different ideas and different perspectives on something and just come to some kind of agreement or even a disagreement and kind of take that as a listener and form your own thoughts about it instead of just having kind of like a one-sided like well a book.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think another thing about a podcast, just from the current day perspective, is like, you know, we have all these social media avenues that can be a way of sharing, but those can go so wrong sometimes, you know, just with all the negativity that can go along with it and bots and things like that. But just kind of having, and that's the goal really of my podcast as well, is to talk to people, you know, actually talk and hear voices. And it's so much easier to just get on and talk than it is to type all this stuff out and
Absolutely. Yeah.
and get the emotion across as well. You know, you really, I think, get to, you in a way, you really get to meet someone and understand a little bit about their life and get inspired and educate yourself and all that good stuff that goes along with the podcast. But do you have any kind of thoughts and ideas what you want your podcast to, you know, the theme of that to be?
I do. I would want it orientated towards self-improvement, all aspects of it. I mean, like you've got mind, body, business, any kind of development in that regard. So
Awesome.
have different people from any background just talking about any kind of improvement that they want, really.
Kind of once again, we've drifted into just this broad area, but getting back to you, how do you, you know, if you look at your Instagram, you know, going to your page, you have several posts about, you know, waking up early and things like that. What is that for you? What does waking up early mean to you?
So it starts the day with, I like to say, it's like hit the ground running in a sense. It sets that pace for the day, and also just having everything going on. I mean, it's that them extra hours you can really get a lot done. It's if you invest those hours, but it's just it's a whole change in your routine and waking up early. You have all this stuff done before you even usually before you even wake up. So it's pretty effective in changing your whole mindset and outlook, and definitely crucial if you want to be successful and manage your time.
Yeah, I've definitely I've had a varied kind of wake up schedule. You know, I went to different times and waking up early, and I think it's just kind of like we were going back before. It's like experimenting with what works best for you. You know, like, is it best to wake up at this time for me, or is it best to wake up maybe a little bit earlier, a little bit later? And I think if you really allow yourself to figure it out, and I think that's where a lot of people kind of go into something and then they fall out of it, is they say, okay, this doesn't work for me, so I'll just go back to what I was doing before, instead of being like, okay, how can I tweak this? How can I,
Right.
you know, make a slight change instead of just giving up on it? I think a lot of people, whether that be waking up early, whether that be a diet or fitness thing, whether whatever it is, it's like I think giving it time is a huge thing. And then being consistent with it, and then just tweaking it here and there. Do you find yourself kind of still doing that too? You're just making some tweaks here and there?
Oh, absolutely. You got to have that adaptability. You're the world's changing around us, and our own. Sometimes I'll have changing priorities or goals or something like that, but the overall mission doesn't change. I'm still after it. So you make those tweaks where it seems necessary, and I find it a good point that you mentioned. It's like it shouldn't be overlooked though that like you start with a plan and it doesn't seem right. We got to realize that sometimes we have to give that plan some time to gain traction, right? Instead of just like, oh well, I tried my diet for a week and it doesn't seem to work, and maybe it needs more time to gain that traction.
Yeah, I definitely. I think that's one area that we struggle with, is that like instant gratification, and a lot of times we make excuses for like, oh well, I didn't realize I was going to have this pop up, so I'll just, I'll do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow, you'll do it again tomorrow, and it's like, oh well, by the end of the week I haven't accomplished anything, so I might as well just, give up on it. And because that first day or two you didn't see those results, you got, demotivated, and it all went downhill. But I think that instant
Absolutely.
gratification is a very dangerous thing.
Yep. And it circles back to that whole orientated towards the outcome more so than just the realizing the purpose of the process.
Yeah, I think that process, it really is. It's such a big part of it. To me, it's
It
like,
is. It's everything.
yeah, to me, it's like I set specific, goals, and I want to achieve those goals. But to me, it's like, it's so fun to see what happens along the way. And maybe that specific goal was a little bit crazy and out of my reach, or maybe it was too easy, and I can adjust either way. But like, just the fact that, I think it's so important that we, I'll go back to it again, but so important that we find a process that really is, the process itself almost is enough to be motivational.
Absolutely. Going through that and you overcome it, and it can help build that motivation, and it reaffirms, the why in itself. Like, why am I doing this?
We talked a little bit about routine, and how it kind of is evolving and changing. But at this specific point, do you have a morning routine that you're really enjoying, or maybe you're switching things up? Like, what does your morning look like these days?
So I recently read, can't think of the general's name, but it's a book that's you probably heard of it, like Make Your Bed, right? And
Right.
it basically goes into like just doing those small things, like making your bed. It's simple. It sets that pace for the day, and you know, even if you don't get anything else done throughout the day, you come home and you're like, okay, at least I made my bed. At least I did something. So that's kind of been pretty pretty good staple in my morning routine. So I've been on that. Just it's a simple thing, and just attention to detail with that. So doing that, I like to read a page of Discipline Equals Freedom by Jocko Willink. That's just a page, or because they're separated in like kind of like categories and everything like that. So that fits good there. And then I like to get on to read about a chapter or whatever fits, and whatever book I'm reading at the time. And I'll go into listen to some audios or podcasts or something. Um, Sometimes I get a workout in the morning. Get some studying in, but it's
Gotcha.
pretty into it. In my routine also, I like to implement cold showers. There's a lot of benefits to that, and I would definitely recommend that to more people out there. Yeah, Wim Hof got me into that. There's a lot of science behind it. I'm not too familiar with all the technicalities of all of it, but I mean, firsthand, I mean, for anybody just jump into a cold shower, I mean, you're gonna notice some changes real quick.
Definitely.
But
yeah, I think it's such like this mental test too. It's like, okay, because I'm
yep,
terrible. Like cold exposure for me, I'm terrible at that. You know, I'd rather do anything else almost than a cold shower. I've never done actually a cold bath. I definitely want to. I want to like put myself in that environment and get those benefits. But it's a mental test, and it's
it
almost like
is. Yeah,
it's crazy because like on the front side of it, it's like it's almost part of it's almost like a stressor to some people. And then at the back end, it's like, oh, okay, this is like actually melting away and like doing such good for me. Kind of a weird, is that weird dichotomy.
it is. It's just as physiologically beneficial as it is like psychologically, for your own mental toughness. And it's pretty interesting.
When you mentioned Wim Hof, we actually have an episode. I don't know if you've ever checked it out, but we have an episode on the weight room with a guy talking about that, and he kind of gives like the background of it, and then the more technical side of it, and then he gives a little demonstration. It's really cool. It was a very impactful episode for me. I haven't dove into that yet either. I've kind of messed around with it a little bit, not really fully invested in it. But yeah, it is like just this idea that we can breathe differently and it causes these things to happen within our body is so bizarre to me.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty interesting. I mean, of all the places on Earth and the universe, it's the mind that's like the most mysterious. And it's kind of, if you take a Goggins approach, I was watching a video about him or with him the other day, and he kind of talks about like dissecting your mind, and you can't, just like in science, you can't do any kind of like dissection in natural environment. You need to put that heat or that cold exposure to really get into your own mind and see what you're capable of, whether that's when you're about to quit and you've been running all day or whatever, or you've been reading all day, working, whatever the case may be. You're at that point where you're about to give up, but you keep going, and then it's like at that point you're starting to realize what you're capable of, and it's pretty interesting.
This idea of like what we are capable of is pretty bizarre because I feel like we definitely most of us stay and do things within this comfort zone. And I think comfort zone is like really an overused term, but if you think about really what that means, like doing things, it doesn't even matter what they are when you're comfortable. Like, you could get a workout in and still be in your comfort zone. You could do, you could do
Right.
whatever and still be in this comfort zone. But like when you take yourself out of that, and I think really probably my biggest personal example is doing a marathon and like hitting a certain point and just realizing like I I'm not I'm no longer in this comfort zone. Like I've definitely hit this mile marker. I think it was, I don't know, maybe 17 or so. And mentally I was just like it's all mental from here. Like I can still technically move my legs, but like if I if I didn't have a reason, I wouldn't. There's no reason why anyone would. Going through this kind of physical pain. Like why would someone
Self
do that?
torture, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like
It is when you think about it, and I think that's why a lot of people don't do it, along with like how society views it. And is is it necessary is a question that would come up, is like, well, why,
right.
well, and then you just have to create your own why on as to, or even how bad you really want to see how far you can go and what you can achieve, or and how bad you want to achieve that. It's a tough process, is pushing yourself and purposely overtraining in a sense.
Kind of what we can go through and what we choose to go through at some points is really, it's almost like you definitely have to have, like you're saying, that why.
Absolutely. And kind of an interesting concept to branch off of that is, how much potential does like a child have if they started like developing a mindset at that age? and they're raised in a certain environment where that promotes growth to that level, and to promote that mindset that you're capable of, like, just more than you can even comprehend.
Yeah, I've thought about that as well. It's like, and I think part of that too another reason why people don't start doing something. It's like, oh, I'm too old. I don't have enough time. I don't, I
Right.
won't see the benefits. I wish I would have started younger. But I think a big part of life, in a perfect kind of world, we would all start and do these things as early as possible. But I think such a big part of life is going through something and having that, whether it be, personal trauma or like seeing somebody else go through something and being like, okay, this is the reason that I'm going to do this. I think it's so hard to just, I mean, other than just habit and not knowing any different, but like I think part of getting, having discipline is a reason, a purpose that happened within your life when you didn't have it. So I think, it's tough because you want to be like, tell a kid, hey, just do these things and you'll be successful. But I don't think it's realistic almost to say that, because I think a lot of success comes with previous failure.
Oh, absolutely. It's that trial and error process of seeing where you messed up, where you can improve upon, and even if you do things good, you can do them better.
Definitely.
And kind of to build off what you said, it's that whole response, that discipline, to give you purpose, and it's that responsibility that gives your life meaning. It's kind of a Jordan Peterson perspective on it, and I mean that's true, and an interesting concept to keep in mind.
Yeah, he's a great person to listen to as well. He just blows my mind
Absolutely.
every time he opens his mouth. It's like, how do you even think like that, man?
Discipline.
Absolutely.
a lot
Gosh.
of a lot of reading, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, just there's so many people out there that can push you and kind of expedite that process, and they're hopefully, it doesn't always have to be the influencer. Maybe it's a teacher or a parent or a coach or whoever, but yeah, there's good people out there and doing good things, and hopefully this podcast and others, and just like I said, everyday people can make small changes and motivate and influence people to do and be better. And that's, I think, where real change comes from, is just one person kind of leading to the next.
Absolutely. Doing what we can with what we got. And that's all we can do.
Definitely, definitely. I think those are good words to end the podcast with. And I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing some time tonight, sharing some time out of your day and just putting it into this podcast and sharing it with those who listen. It's really cool to have you do that.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. It was a good time for sure.
Absolutely. So if you want to share with the listeners where they can find you, that would be cool if they want to kind of follow what you're doing.
Okay. I'm on Instagram at sculpting_a legacy.
Awesome, awesome. Well, definitely go check that out. I'll have the stuff in the description. Go, support and maybe be motivated and give a follow. And if we can all follow each other, have this good community to help push each other, I think that's where we'll see a lot of progress. So once again, thanks for coming on, and have to stay in touch and keep each other accountable and motivated.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me on.